I'm bringing more receipts to stop the lying, the guessing and the self-congratulation. For too long we've seen self-proclaimed journalists dominate the scene with complete guesswork and twist themselves into knots to proclaim that they were right all along. There's too much planned change and too much someone said this might happen, I'm a legend for being right about this. From March to now, here's what people got wrong the last month and a half as we lead into WrestleMania. Fightful's paywall reported before Elimination Chamber that The Rock segment would be in the middle of the show. This was completely incorrect as The Rock main evented, and we reported about this during Spoiler Warning. WrestleVotes claimed that Rey Fenix would be on the WrestleMania 41 card. Whilst he technically still has a week that things can change and he can appear, this seems the right time to call this one incorrect. He's only just debuted, and the card is pretty stable outside of Randy Orton having nobody to wrestle. If he does end up wrestling Randy Orton, I'll happily issue a retraction, but there's a lot of WrestleVotes you're going to be hearing about, including right now. WrestleVotes also reported that The Rock would appear on Raw alongside John Cena during one of the overseas Raw shows, which have now wrapped up, with no sign of The Rock. Now, I certainly didn't see him, but I did see John Cena, so maybe The Rock suddenly has the you can't see me powers. What a superpower to have, better than Black Adam. Wrestling Observer's Brian Alvarez reported that there'll be twists and turns going into WrestleMania. I am staggered by this report. I don't know who to bring this into here though, because I can't imagine anyone actually calling that a report, but there it is on the Cage Side Seats Rumour Roundup that I'm using as a reference point for the whole world to see. So someone thought this was massively newsworthy, and I'm not certain it's Brian Alvarez. PW Nexus and Body Slam, who are almost always referenced in Cage Side Seats as a unit, have both reported that Bo Dallas was a member of the White Six injured. Fightful Select later also said the same. That said, I've seen no evidence that this is right or wrong. There's been no confirmation of anything White Six related thus far. So while I'm here largely to say what's wrong, I do sometimes have to bring up that right now there's just no evidence one way or the other on this one. Also, according to PW Nexus and Body Slam, and something I have to pick out even though there's no evidence of it, to be clear this came from Discord user Cody Rhodes rather than PW Nexus or Body Slam, the WWE are going to bring back WWE Evolution on July 5th. There is no confirmation of this yet. Evolution is going to come up later, and it will make sense that I put that in there. Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer continues to pop up in these videos. He states that there was a plan for John Cena's heel turn to happen at the end of his match at WrestleMania with Cody Rhodes. This was not the plan. I reported at length that this was not the plan. Brian Gewirtz, who helped write this segment, also clarified that this was never the plan. And I'm also starting to feel as though Brian Gewirtz really doesn't like Dave Meltzer. I wonder why. Meltzer also reports that Travis Scott has classic, and I quote, backstage heat due to the way he struck Cody Rhodes during John Cena's heel turn. Nope, not a thing. The phrase backstage heat comes up so often from people like Dave Meltzer that it's lost all meaning. You know why? Because it never had any meaning. More on that to come with Charlotte Flair and Tiffany Stratton. PW Insider and Fightful got into a Barney over Jade Cargill, and instead of putting them in a cage match, I'll just say PW Insider was wrong, because they were. PW Insider claimed that Jade Cargill was not injured at all during her time off for injury. Fightful said that she was. Fightful was right. As I reported during Spoiler Warning, the injury was exaggerated, but the injury was in fact real. That's one where Fightful was right. We come up to the next one, and I'll let you guys judge this one because there's evidence, but it's circumstantial. After PW Torch's Wade Keller reported on WWE plans to quietly phase out Shinsuke Nakamura, Fightful reported that that was news to them. Nakamura has not been seen on WWE TV since. The day of the report, he did appear in a match with Damian Priest. Funnily enough, anyone else could also have filled that spot, but they chose Nakamura. It's only been a month that we haven't seen him now, so there's nothing concrete, but I feel the wind is definitely blowing in one direction here. Let me know whether you expect we'll see Shinsuke Nakamura again. Cage Side Seats have stated that, and I quote, some fans noticed Seth Rollins has lost his freaking on the WWE website. This is a lot like Austin Powers losing his mojo. Seth Rollins without a freaking is just Monday Night Rollins. Seth Rollins now lets those same fans say his middle name for him, so I don't really think there's anything to this. In a name that's going to come up a lot during this, Fightful updated a January report that they made that Asuka had WrestleMania plans to say that there was no update. You heard me right there. Their update on Asuka was a complete no update. It was to basically say to people, there's no update here. Maybe a lot of people are asking questions. I know their shows are quite well attended, so it could well be that. But with WrestleMania less than a week away and there's been no sign of Asuka, I feel it's fairly certain now to say that this is not correct. WrestleVotes, again, this name's going to come up a lot today, reported on a team name for The Rock and John Cena. You're going to love this. The Rock and Soul Connection. No reference has been made at any point to this team name, and in fact, once again Brian Gewirtz stepped in to state, and I quote, "Your sources are drunk." That is certainly one way to raise a query. WrestleVotes is one of a couple of Sportskeeda sources that come up quite a lot here. Chris Featherstone is another. He's the one who reported that Drew McIntyre would win the Chamber and align with The Rock. Funnily enough, and I do have to point out, we didn't hear a lot from Chris Featherstone during this time. His name does not come up at all in this. WrestleVotes, based on how they're doing so far, might also have to go quiet for a while. Fightful reported that the WWE had a tag team program planned for Alexa Bliss at WrestleMania. Certainly there does seem to have been room for this to happen, with Lyra Valkyria and Bayley eventually taking a spot in a 2-on-2 match against Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. So we could have had four corners, we could have had Alexa Bliss potentially replacing Raquel Rodriguez, we could have had something involving Bliss and Cross. A lot of things this could be. However, Bliss did not travel for any of the overseas events, and she later clarified that it was far from a last-minute thing that saw plans change. I'm not personally aware of there being any plans for Bliss at WrestleMania, and certainly that seems to be what she was suggesting. PW Insider stated there have been talks of Ken Shamrock going into the Hall of Fame, a name that I feel is well overdue. No such luck, however, and this is the first of many Hall of Fame reports to be incorrect. A lot of accurate information came out about the Hall of Fame this year. Usually when it comes to Hall of Fame, there's a lot of speculation, pretending to be reporting, and some wrestling journalists and wrestling news outlets get a bit caught up in it. Not so this time. PW Insider were just wrong. More on Evolution, I said we'd come to more, this time from Fightful's paywall stating that they haven't heard anything about Evolution coming back. This is coming some weeks after the initial report from sister channels PW Nexus and Body Slam, scissoring sisters as it were. More to come with this from a name that's already come up as being wrong a lot. We'll see how that one goes. PW Insider decided to join in the updates about Asuka's injury status, and they copied Fightful's work by giving an update that provided zero update. Just want to be clear on this. There is a reason that some outlets are able to create headlines from sharing zero news, and this genuinely earned money and headlines for multiple wrestling media outlets twice in the month of March. First, they reported on what PW Insider said. Then they reported on what Fightful said, and both updates basically were nothing to report. But people will have still clicked on them because of the clickbait. The only reason I'm bringing this up at all is because someone thought no news was big news, and I really have to point it out. In a curious case of who effing knows, John Alba and Sean Ross Sapp were both reporting on TNA's surprise at Gail Kim's firing and TNA's lack of surprise at Gail Kim's firing. Feasible certainly coming from different sources, but it does make for very awkward reading now looking at it back, and I just had to basically highlight a rarely confusing experience for me. WrestleVotes stated that WWE is indeed bringing back WWE Evolution and would be announcing the show before WrestleMania 41. This is the third report on this, so it was clearly building steam here, and judging by how much the WrestleVotes name came up, I'm guessing you know where I'm heading with this. WrestleVotes also reported that Nia Jax wasn't on WWE TV due to not being cleared for action. This was denied by none other than Nia Jax herself. She particularly got into an argument with an outlet or someone who used to watch Spoiler Warning but nowadays just makes up news because he didn't like the reality that I was sharing. She won the argument and the fight. Guy's been embarrassed a lot recently. WrestleVotes reported that Rey Fénix's first opponent was planned to be Andrade as far back as March 21st. This didn't happen then, and it didn't happen when Fénix did eventually debut. I feel like we're hitting WrestleVotes really hard this month. Sometimes, unfortunately, that just seems to be what happens. Worked Wrestling, a name that we don't see a lot anymore, reported that Charlotte Flair's divorce being mentioned during a car crash segment with Tiffany Stratton was cleared ahead of time. Nobody, including Charlotte Flair or Tiffany Stratton, believed them. This was the only instance I saw of Worked Wrestling reporting popping up in the Cage Side Seats reference, or in fact in any of the independent research that I did based on what Cage Side Seats put forward, which gives them, Worked Wrestling, a 100% failure record for the month of March. Let me know if Worked Wrestling also reported anything accurately so we can bring that number down, okay? Fightful doesn't expect to see Becky Lynch on the WrestleMania card. This was reported, 1, once the card was pretty much full, and 2, when she hadn't been seen in months, so it's not exactly a scoop, but once again, I wouldn't put this down to Fightful making it big news. I put this down to a slow news cycle, choosing to turn commentary into clickbait rather than anything Fightful did here. I know people are really trying to get every possible piece of blood out of the stone of, is there going to be a Becky Lynch at WrestleMania? There isn't. You know this. Asking for news from every possible other source is not going to help the situation. The Wrestling Observer stated there's been no contact between WWE and AEW about Sting potentially inducting Lex Luger into the Hall of Fame. Fightful, and indeed spoiler warning, have made WWE intentions clear. Also, typing Lex Luger is apparently a lot harder than typing Leg Luger or Leg Lugger, which I did a huge amount of times while writing this script. WrestleVote's disputed reporting that Kamala was going into the Hall of Fame. Stating that it might still happen in the future, WrestleVotes were almost immediately corrected when the WWE announced that Kamala was going into the Hall of Fame. It's not a banner week for WrestleVotes, I tell you. And unfortunately, the top piece of news we have to share, the big massive news that I've been building to that was incorrect, was also a WrestleVotes report. WrestleVotes had stated that the announcement of Evolution 2 would take place on April 7th, 6 days ago. That date has come and gone. Nothing happened. Nothing. WrestleVotes, whose name and face remain unknown, thus meaning they could be as likely to be Triple H's Andrew Tate, put their money where their mouth was, and now they're flat broke. And my word, their name came up a lot in this video. In total, combining the previous video as well, that's now 9 incorrect reports from the Wrestling Observer, 7 from PW Insider, 5 from Fightful, a whopping 12 from WrestleVotes, 8 of which came during this period alone, and 3 from Chris Featherstone of Sportskeeda. Drop a comment if you want more content like this in the future, and check out the latest spoiler warning on the Wyatt 6 that's on your screen right now.